When Mike's wife humiliated him in front of friends, again, he finally snapped. But instead of shouting or cheating back, he played it smart. What began as a petty jab over burnt burgers turned into the ultimate revenge. You won't believe how one man turned emotional chaos into a clean legal escape and left his ex drowning in her own lies. It started with a backyard barbecue and a burnt burger. Mike had always loved summer weekends. The smell of grilling meat, kids running through sprinklers, cold beer in hand. It was a break from the grind. He was flipping burgers at Tom Wilson's cookout in the Denver suburbs, debating football and trying to ignore how his wife had been acting lately. Sarah, his wife of 8 years, stood a few feet away with a wine glass in hand, laughing louder than the jokes deserved. Mike caught the tail end of her sentence. "Mike's burning the burgers again. Can you focus for once?" And suddenly the laughter wasn't so funny. Heads turned. People smiled uncomfortably. Tom paused mid-sentence, spatula in hand. Mike forced a grin and flipped a patty. "Got it handled, Sarah," he said, trying to keep his voice light, though his pulse was racing. Tom leaned in. "She's just teasing, man. Burgers look fine." Mike didn't reply. This wasn't the first time she'd done this. Mocked him in public under the excuse of just a joke. Earlier that week, she'd made a crack about his parking skills at a brewery. Before that, she'd rolled her eyes at dinner with coworkers, claiming he was taking 6 months to fix the garage door. These weren't jokes. They were insults wearing makeup. That night, Mike brought it up as they lay in bed. "Why do you keep doing that? Making me look like a clown in front of people?" Sarah didn't even look at him. "You're too sensitive. It was a joke. Chill." But Mike couldn't chill. Not anymore. By the end of the week, he'd had enough. Sarah's credit card statement came in. Boutique stores, wine bars, brunches. She wasn't just disrespecting him emotionally. She was draining their account like it was hers alone. Mike called the bank, canceled the joint card, got a new one in his name. The next morning, Sarah found out. Her face twisted when her card got declined at a wine shop. "You cut me off?" she shouted, storming into the kitchen. Mike didn't flinch. He sipped his coffee slowly. "You want to blow money? Use your own. I'm not your ATM." She slammed the door and left, but Mike felt something he hadn't in a long time: control. In college, Sarah had been fiery and sharp, a match for Mike's quiet ambition. They used to talk for hours about building something big together. Now her sharpness felt more like a blade turned on him. She started shutting down. Cold responses, late nights out, passive-aggressive silence. He suggested a weekend trip to Estes Park. She laughed. "I'm not into fake couple retreats." Mike cooked her favorite meals, handled all the chores, even brought up counseling. "You're trying too hard," she snapped. "This isn't an engineering problem." But to Mike, it was a system breaking down. And no matter how much effort he put in, the signals were clear. Sarah didn't want to reconnect. She wanted control. Then came the moment everything changed. Mike got home late, exhausted after a 12-hour day. He'd driven across town to get her favorite Thai food. "Got your basil chicken," he called out, trying to keep things normal. Sarah glanced up from her laptop. "Not spicy noodles, right? You know I hate those." He checked the bag, though he already knew he got it right. "Basil chicken, no noodles." She nudged the bag away with her foot. "Whatever, not hungry." Mike stood there, bag in hand, realizing it wasn't about dinner. It was about power, about watching him jump, just to push him back down. So he sat at the table, opened the box, ate. She glared. "You're making a scene over food?" "No," he said calmly. "I'm just done begging for your approval." For once, she had no snarky comeback. That's when the shift began. He stopped updating her on his schedule, ate out more, reclaimed the garage, turned it into a workspace, boxed up her wine crates and antique junk. She complained. He ignored it. He started hiking on weekends with coworkers. Fresh air, open trails, people who didn't talk down to him. One guy, Jake, noticed his energy shift. "Marriage stuff?" Jake asked one morning on the trail. Mike nodded. "Yeah, feels like I'm invisible at home." "You're not," Jake said. "You're just with the wrong person." The words echoed. At a coffee shop brunch with Sarah's friends, she tried another joke, this time about Mike forgetting to fix the dishwasher. He didn't take the bait. Fixed it last week, he said flatly. Maybe you forgot how to load it. The table went quiet. Sarah's smile faded. And Mike? He didn't feel guilt. He felt free. Mike's quiet resistance turned into a daily habit. He stopped chasing Sarah's attention, and she noticed. Her tactics changed. Less sarcasm, more absence. She'd disappear for hours with vague excuses. Out with Lisa, she'd say, but Lisa once mentioned in passing she hadn't seen Sarah in over a week. One Thursday, Mike came home from work. No lights on, no note. Her car was gone. He waited. At 8 p.m., the door creaked open, and she walked in, heels in one hand, purse in the other. Her breath smelled faintly of gin. "Where were you?" Mike asked, keeping his tone even. She barely looked up. "Out." "No text? Nothing?" She dropped her purse on the couch. "I'm not your teenager." "No," he said. "You're my wife." That used to mean something. She poured herself a glass of water, deliberately ignoring him. "You're always gone, Mike. What do you care?" He stepped closer. "I'm working to keep this house running." "What's your excuse?" She slammed the glass on the counter, water splashing. "Maybe I'm tired of you." She brushed past him without waiting for a reply. Mike stood there, the faucet dripping behind him, unsure whether to laugh or scream. Later, their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Carter, caught him checking the mailbox. "Everything okay with Sarah?" she asked, her watering can tilting slightly. Mike gave a tired smile. "Just going through something." She nodded slowly. "Marriage takes two, Mike. You've always been a good one. Don't forget that." Her words stayed with him longer than Sarah's voice ever did. That weekend, Mike signed up for a hiking group. At first, it was just a reason to get out of the house. But being out in the Colorado trails with strangers who didn't know him as Sarah's husband felt like breathing again. He met Jake, a welder going through a divorce of his own. "She made everything about her," Jake said once, swigging water. "Eventually, I realized I was just background noise." Mike didn't say much, but the comparison hit home. Meanwhile, Sarah kept up appearances. She'd show up to his work events just to undercut him. At a happy hour with his team, she dropped another public dig. "Mike's too busy saving the world to change a light bulb at home," she said with a smile. His team laughed awkwardly. Mike leaned back in his chair. Sarah's stand-up career is really taking off. That got a bigger laugh, and her face went cold. She wasn't used to losing the room. The pattern repeated. At another dinner party, she mocked his lawn care. "Our yard's turning into a jungle," she said, sipping wine. Mike didn't flinch. "Funny, haven't seen you touch a rake in years." The host laughed nervously. Sarah didn't. Driving home that night, the silence between them was thick. "You gonna keep embarrassing me in front of people?" she finally snapped. "I'm matching your energy," he replied, eyes on the road. "You started this game." At home, she locked the bedroom door. Mike didn't try to open it. Instead, he stayed up planning. He stopped texting her when he was running late. Didn't explain where he was going. Didn't ask where she was. One night, she cornered him in the kitchen. "Where were you?" "Out." "With who?" "People who don't insult me for fun." She crossed her arms, glaring. "You trying to punish me?" "No," he said calmly, pouring a glass of water. "I'm practicing not caring." He walked to the guest room and locked the door. That was the moment the powers shifted completely. From there, Mike began quietly preparing. He moved $12,000 into a new savings account under his name. He called his friend Mark, a real estate agent, and asked about small apartments near downtown. He wasn't sure he'd leave yet, but he wanted the option. Then came the final straw. It was a Saturday. Mike was in the garage reorganizing tools when he heard Sarah's voice on the back deck. She was on the phone laughing. "He's clueless," she said, her voice mocking. "Always playing with his rockets or whatever. He has no idea." Mike froze. Not in anger, but in realization. That night, he didn't mention the call. He just observed. Noticed how she hid her phone when he entered the room, how she dodged questions, how she suddenly had errands that lasted 6 hours. He started logging the days and times, not for revenge, just clarity. Then he met with Dave, his old friend, for a beer. "You ever feel like your wife doesn't even like you?" Mike asked, staring at his pint. Dave didn't hesitate. I saw her at the party, Mike. You were being polite, and she kept cutting you down. That's not love. That's control. Mike nodded slowly. Yeah, I think I'm done. Dave clapped his shoulder. You've got options. Don't stay trapped. Mike didn't respond right away, but in his mind he was already packing boxes. Mike didn't slam doors. He didn't yell. He made a plan. He called Mark again on Monday. Find me something small but clean. 1 bedroom, quiet, downtown if possible. 3 days later, Mark sent a list of options. Mike picked one that same day. Quiet street, no baggage, just freedom. He opened a new checking account, transferred more savings, and hired a divorce lawyer. Colorado was a no-fault state. He didn't need a reason, just a signature. By then, Sarah was completely checked out, or so she thought. Her late nights became routine. She stopped pretending. Sometimes she'd come home smelling like someone else's cologne. Once she had a hickey on her neck and didn't even try to hide it. Mike didn't say a word. He wanted her to think he didn't know. That was the trap. The final test came one Saturday afternoon. Sarah had gone shopping for 5 hours. Mike was organizing tools when he heard her on the phone again. This time, she wasn't even trying to be quiet. Don't worry about him. He's clueless. I could tell him I'm training for a space mission and he'd believe it. She laughed. Mike didn't flinch. He was done reacting. The next day, Sarah was at work when Mike rented a U-Haul. He packed only what was his tools, his books, his laptop, a few kitchen items, his clothes. The flat-screen TV he'd bought with his bonus went into the truck. He left everything else. No revenge, no drama, just removal. He took the lease paperwork, the new keys, and the signed divorce papers and set them all on the kitchen counter with a note that read, "You made your choice. I made mine." By the time Sarah got home, the sun was setting and Mike was loading the last box. She stood in the driveway, frozen. What the hell is this? Mike closed the truck. It's over. Papers are inside. She stepped closer, her voice rising. You're just leaving? After everything? After everything, he repeated calmly. You stopped being my partner a long time ago. Her mouth opened, then closed. You can't just walk out, she said louder now. You don't get to decide alone. I'm not walking out, Mike said, stepping into the driver's seat. I'm escaping. He drove away without looking back. That night, her messages started. 9:23 p.m. We need to talk. 10:02 p.m. Don't do this. We can fix it. 11:14 p.m. You're making a huge mistake. By the third message, Mike blocked her number. The next morning, he met with his lawyer. The paperwork was clean. No cheating accusations needed. He got to keep his savings, his 401k, and his truck. She could keep the house, with the mortgage in her name. Sarah wanted control. Now she had the whole thing, alone. News spread fast among their mutual friends. Some were shocked, others weren't. At Dave's next barbecue, people pulled Mike aside. You okay? Heard what happened. She really did a number on you, huh? Mike didn't play the victim. I just stopped waiting for things to get better. Karen, Dave's wife, hugged him. About time. You were carrying that marriage alone. Mike spent the next week furnishing his new place. Not out of spite, just freedom. A new couch, a used coffee table. Silence he could breathe in. One night he got a call from a mutual friend. She's panicking. Says she didn't see it coming. Mike laughed softly. She saw it coming. She just didn't believe I'd do it. Sarah didn't believe it was real until the mortgage payment hit her inbox. Mike had officially transferred the house into her name during the divorce. She wanted the house, insisted on keeping it. Now it was hers, along with the bills, the maintenance, and the silence. Her first few messages after the split were attempts at control. Let's talk. We can reset. Don't throw away everything we built. Mike didn't answer. His lawyer did, professionally, legally, coldly. She got the house. He kept the savings, the truck, his retirement account, and everything with his name on it. No yelling, no scenes, just facts. Sarah's voice changed quickly, from pleading to bitter. She called mutual friends, spun the story. Mike was cold, checked out, selfish. But the problem was, People had seen her behavior for years. Her jokes at dinners, the jabs at parties, the controlling tone. Nobody bought the narrative anymore. At first, she had a few friends left in her corner, but those began to vanish. Slowly, quietly. Texts left unanswered. Invitations dropped. Her charm had limits, and she'd already burned through most people's patience. Karen told Mike a few weeks later. She called me crying, said she doesn't know what happened. Mike raised an eyebrow. She didn't see it coming? Karen nodded, more sad than angry. Some people think the leash is forever. She didn't notice you were already walking away. Meanwhile, Mike was building a new life. His downtown apartment wasn't huge, but it was his. He hung photos from weekend hikes, summits reached, beers shared, real smiles. The air was quiet, peaceful. Nobody criticizing how he loaded a dishwasher or how late he worked. He hit the gym again, reconnected with old college friends, hiked every Saturday. At work, he got promoted, lead on a new propulsion tech project. His manager said, "You've been focused lately." Mike just nodded. Peace will do that. Then came Elena. They met at a brewery trivia night. She was quick with a comeback, laughed without malice, and asked him about him, not his job, not his salary, not his status. Just him. They started texting, then weekend walks, then dinners. Mike wasn't rushing anything. He wasn't looking to fill a void. But Elena didn't feel like an escape. She felt like ease. Back in the suburbs, Sarah was struggling. Karen mentioned it again. She's falling behind on payments. Said she might sell the house. She wanted it, Mike replied. She didn't want to lose the game, Karen said. But it turns out the prize was the mortgage and an empty living room. Sarah had tried dating, but the men she attracted weren't interested in commitment. They liked her spark until they got burned. Her charm wore thin when there was no one to knock down. Occasionally, Sarah would mention Mike in passing to mutual friends, her tone heavy. He changed, she'd say. He gave up. But everyone knew the truth. Mike hadn't changed. He'd grown. He wasn't bitter. He didn't wish her harm. He just stopped being available for her drama. One evening, as he sat with Elena on a park bench watching the sun drop behind the Rockies, his phone buzzed, a message request from Sarah. He stared at it for a moment. It read, "I miss you. Can we talk?" He deleted it. Not out of anger, but because he didn't owe her a response anymore. That chapter was closed, permanently. 6 months after the divorce, Mike barely recognized his old life. The stress that used to follow him home had vanished. No more second-guessing his words. No more silent treatments. No more waiting for someone to care that he was trying. What replaced it wasn't dramatic, it was peace. And that was everything. His apartment was small, sure, but it was steady. Mornings started with black coffee, jazz on low volume, and no one criticizing his routine. His weekends were filled with hiking, cooking, reading, things he'd once abandoned trying to fix a marriage that didn't want fixing. At work, his performance had skyrocketed. He was leading a new propulsion system initiative, and his team respected him. He wasn't dragging emotional exhaustion into meetings anymore. He was fully present, focused. And Elena, she became part of that peace. They didn't rush. There were no games. When she laughed, it wasn't at his expense. When she asked questions, it wasn't to trap him. She listened. She challenged him, but without cruelty. She didn't need to feel superior. She just liked being with him. One weekend, Mike visited Dave and Karen's place for a cookout. Nothing fancy, just grilled burgers, music, and old friends. Karen pulled him aside near the cooler. "She's been asking about you," she said. Mike didn't ask who. "Sarah," Karen continued, "she's struggling. Mortgage is killing her. Said she didn't see it all falling apart." Mike nodded. "She built it that way." Karen looked away for a second, then met his eyes. "She told me she misses you." Mike didn't flinch. "She misses the version of me who tolerated her." "That guy's gone." Karen smiled a little. "Good." Back at the grill, Dave tossed Mike a beer. "You know," he said, "she thought she'd break you." Mike shook his head. "She never understood me. I wasn't trying to win. I just wanted peace." Dave raised his bottle. "And now you've got it." That night, as Mike drove home, He thought about how many chances he'd given her, how long he'd bent himself to fit someone else's comfort zone, and how in the end, it wasn't a blow-up or betrayal that saved him. It was quiet detachment. Sarah hadn't expected him to leave because she'd grown used to his silence meaning surrender. She never realized silence could mean planning. Mutual friends said she still told stories about how he changed, how he abandoned the marriage. But those stories fell flat now. People remembered the dinner parties, the barbed jokes, the way she never let him finish a sentence without turning it into a punchline. Now she sat alone in a house that used to be her kingdom. Her friends were distant. The charm she used to weaponize had lost its power. Mike didn't hate her. He didn't even feel angry anymore. She was a lesson, one he finally stopped ignoring. He'd spent years thinking love meant fixing everything. But the truth, love doesn't require a sacrifice of dignity. It requires mutual respect, and Sarah never gave him that. So he stopped giving her chances. Now he had freedom, focus, and a woman who valued him. He had trails to hike, projects to build, and laughter that wasn't forced. Most importantly, he had himself again. And that was the real revenge, not hurting her, thriving without her.